Hello and welcome to the SingaporeConnect COVID-19 Forum. For those of you joining us the first time, SingaporeConnect is a San Francisco Bay Area-based volunteer-run overseas Singaporean group which was started almost 20 years ago. Since March 15th this year, SingaporeConnect has been facilitating these community updates on the evolving COVID-19 situation in partnership with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Singapore Global Network. We've also had special guest subject matter experts from our community. In our previous sessions, we've addressed the impact of COVID-19 on personal and professional topics like COVID-19 prevention, the search for the COVID-19 cure, mental health during shelter in place, the Singapore-US visa situation, job opportunities in Singapore, education, Singaporean Bay Area restaurants, as well as cooking Singaporean food at home. Today, in our 12th session, we will be featuring three key topics: voting, visas, and venture capital. In this segment on visas, we'd like to invite Lin Junwen, Los Angeles-based immigration lawyer, to update us on the implications of the 22nd June 2020 White House proclamation suspending entry of aliens who present a risk to the US labor market following the coronavirus outbreak. Welcome, Junwen, and thank you for joining us again. Around visas.
Okay, hi. So for those of you who've attended the last session, probably know who I am. So nothing really special. I mean, I work as an immigration attorney here. I'm based in LA. So we can move on to the next slide.
Great, thank you.
And then my usual disclaimer is that this is just for informational purposes only, and it's not legal advice.
Great.
Yeah. All right, next. Okay, so this one is just one of my
I seem to be losing Junwen.
You have
Is everybody experiencing the same thing? We're having Junwen's kind of weaving in and out.
Yep, that's right.
Junwen, could you try again, please? We missed some of what you just said.
Yeah. Can you see and hear me now?
We can see and hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, maybe my internet connection is unstable. Just let me know again if you encounter any issues. All right. So here we have the chart that we're revisiting again because we'll be talking a lot about the Department of State, which oversees the embassies and consulates around the world. But you can also see here that there is also USCIS, which deals with applications for immigration benefits here in the US. So I just wanted to bring these to your attention because the Department of State in particular will be mentioned quite a lot here.
Great, thank you for this overview. Let's dive in.
All right. So much to our dismay, on June 22nd, Trump issued this presidential proclamation that now impacts quite a number of visas, as opposed to the last one, which really impacted mainly people applying for green cards from overseas with quite a number of exceptions. Here it's pretty broad. And so I'll dive in right now to a summary. So effective June 24th and expiring December 31st this year, but which may be extended as necessary. The proclamation suspends the issuance of visas for those seeking entry under the following: H-1B visa and any foreign national accompanying or following to join them. For example, an H-4 spouse. You have a H-2B visa and any foreign national accompanying or following to join them. J visa, to the extent that it's a J1 for an intern, trainee, teacher, camp counselor, au pair, summer work travel program, and any foreign national accompanying or following to join them, like a J2 spouse for any of the above mentioned classes of J1 visas, because J1 visas actually cover a lot of different types of classes. And then you have the L visa and any foreign national accompanying or following to join them. So it includes L2 spouse, for example. Okay, the proclamation will only apply to an individual covered by the above if they satisfy three conditions. If they're outside the US on the effective date of the proclamation, so June 24th, and do not have a non-immigrant visa that is valid on June 24th, and do not have an official travel document other than a visa. For example, your passport, valid on June 24th or issued thereafter. So you are really looking at the first two conditions: outside the US on June 24th, and you do not have a non-immigrant visa that's valid on June 24th. When these conditions are satisfied, and if you fall under the preceding classes of visa mentioned here, then the proclamation applies to you. Okay, next slide. So the proclamation does state some specific exceptions. So it will not apply to lawful permanent residents. So green card holders are okay. Spouses or children of US citizens, these people are okay. Any individual seeking entry to provide temporary labor essential to the US food supply chain. So anyone, coming to work to help with the US food supply chain, or any individual whose entry would be the national interest. And by national interest, it would typically mean if you are working in a capacity where you are critical to the defense, law enforcement, diplomacy, or national security of the US, or involved in the provision of medical care for people with COVID-19 and hospitalized. You're involved with the provision of medical research to combat COVID-19. You're necessary to facilitate the immediate and continued economic recovery of the US, or are children who would age out of eligibility of a visa because of this proclamation or the preceding one. So, for example, children who are dependents of, say, the principal visa applicant who would be aging out because they're close to reaching 21 years of age. So this is just a quick summary, but the next slides I will discuss how this is applied to us, which would be, in a sense, more concrete. So let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so specifically, who is not included in this proclamation? So as we've seen, if you're a green card holder or children, or if you're a child or spouse of a US citizen, you're not included in the proclamation.
So you're safe, basically, what you're saying is. Okay.
Yeah. So for those of you who already have green cards here in the US, you're okay. Okay, it's essential to food supply chain or national interest. I think, the problem here is how do you define these? And currently it's very subjective. It's really dependent on governmental interpretation, essentially. But if you are, part of the US food supply chain, if you are going to work for a food supplier, for example, you should be okay in principle. If you're a doctor coming to, help with COVID-19, okay in principle. Okay, the next thing is, okay, if you're inside the US as of June 24th, you should, in principle, legally speaking, be okay. So for those of you, who are here in the US, especially, I know that maybe some of you are seeking a change of status or an extension of status with USCIS here in the US. You're okay. Maybe some of you have those applications with USCIS pending. You're okay. The proclamation doesn't cover you, doesn't limit you. Or if you're here in the US, as of June 24th, of course, and seeking adjustment of status to obtain a green card here in the US, and it's still pending, you're okay. If you already have a valid visa, so that's the next sub point. If you already have a valid visa embossed in your passport that's issued before June 24th, you are okay. So this is at least one confirmation that we've had from the US government, which is like, for those of you who already, for example, have an H-1B visa or an H-1B1 visa that is not expired, that's already embossed in your passport, you are okay. And the Department of State has stated that no valid visas will be revoked. So once it's valid, you already have a visa, they're not going to like revoke it. Okay, next.
That's good to know. That's a relief. I mean, many Singaporeans were asking those questions.
Yeah, especially those with already have valid visas. Actually, regardless of whether you're in the US or outside the US, but it's more relevant when you talk about visas. The visas that are embossed passport, you are really talking about issues of entry. So when I talk about, I think for some of you who attended the last session, there's a difference between the visa and your passport and the status in the US. The visa and the passport is really an issue of entry because it functions something like an entry ticket. You need to have an unexpired visa, a valid unexpired visa in your passport in order to enter the US from overseas. So this likely could have been a concern for some Singaporeans who already have a valid visa in the US, but who are outside the US, because when the proclamation came out, it's like it suspends and limits the entry of people, you see. So, but for those of you who already have a valid visa before June 24th, let's say you decided to go and visit Singapore in June, but you already had a valid visa inside, and suddenly this proclamation came out, you're okay. You can you should be admitted back into the US.
That's great to know. And Jun, when some of us are wondering, of course, when we say food supply chain, do you think that applies to chefs and cooks and restaurant owners?
I would firmly argue yes. But it's really up to governmental interpretation. As you may have suspected, as many of you may have suspected, the proclamation is vague, whether intentionally or unintentionally, and it leaves a lot of room for subjectivity. A lot of language in the proclamation, leaves it up to the government bodies to interpret these terms like national interest or essential to food supply chain, things like that. But I would firmly argue that that would be yes. If a chef, you're providing food, but yeah, later I'll get to the practical issues, which I think would be, to me, it's quite a big thing that may override what we just talked about. So, okay, so who else is not included? Okay, Singaporeans, we enjoy ESTA. So if you're, if you decide, okay, yeah, I'm still going to come to US to visit Yosemite, on an ESTA, which is under the visa waiver program through the ESTA system, then yeah, it's, you're not affected by the proclamation. If you're coming for valid ESTA related reason, you should be okay. And I just want to make one quick note here, which is when we talk about the visa waiver program that is enjoyed by Singaporeans and people from certain other countries, this is different from being a visa exempt country. So what does that mean? So I think there was a question that was posted regarding Canadians, because actually Canadians are in general not affected by the proclamation because it is a visa-exempt country. Canadians get really special treatment. And what visa-exempt mean really is that they don't actually, for many of their visa classes, they actually don't have a visa. They don't need a visa embossed in their Canadian passport in order to enter the US. So, so for example, for some of you on H1B or L1 or O1 visas, you recall you needed a US CIS approval first before you visit the US embassy to get your respective visa in your passport. But Canadians, for some of these examples that I mentioned, all they need is the US CIS approval when they come to the US. They don't need to visit an embassy to get an actual visa embossed in their passport. Mm-hmm. And because of that, because there's no visa issuance issue for Canadians, since Canada is a visa-exempt country, many of them are not affected by and large by this proclamation. So just a note to clarify. Mm-hmm. And then finally, certain non-immigrant classes. And this is non-exhaustive so far because unfortunately, the proclamation is lacking in precision and clarity at this time. Mm-hmm. So if you're seeking the following visas, for instance, the A1, B1, B2, E1, E2, E3, E3 only applies to Australians, F1 student visas, O1, P1, and the dependent visas of these classes, you are not affected. If you're seeking a J1 visa for being a college, university student, international visitor, physician, professor, research scholar, secondary school student, short-term scholar and specialist, and your spouse is coming along with you for J2, you are not affected as well. But unfortunately, most Singaporeans are seeking J1 visas to be interns, and interns are covered by the proclamation, J1 interns. So now we arrive at the $1 million question. Mm-hmm. What about H1B1 Singapore? Since Singaporeans often use this visa classification. So the main inquiry is with regards to the interpretation of Section 2A. The excerpted portion states the entry into the US of any alien seeking entry pursuant to any of the following non-immigrant visas is hereby suspended and limited. And H1B or H2B visa. So what does that mean? H1B, officially it's a separate classification as the H1B1 Singapore. But at the same time, it has the words H1B in it. And H1B, could it include an H1B1? Mm-hmm. This is currently a question mark, unfortunately, as of the date of today's presentation. So here's a short chronology. So on June 22nd and 23rd, actually some immigration lawyers, so I guess my colleagues in the US, have begun to opine that H1B1 isn't included in the proclamation. So I'm very heartened to see that, and I want to agree that shortly thereafter, or during, on June 23rd and 24th, the US Embassy in Singapore stated that it's awaiting implementing guidance from the Department of State, and so will not issue H1B1 visas for the time being. So for that, at that time, is saying, okay, we are still waiting for guidance from the Department of State. So because of that, we are not, issuing any H1B1 visas. But don't forget, currently the routine services are being suspended anyway due to COVID. So all visa classes, in a sense, are affected. They can't issue any visas for that matter. Shortly after that, on June 23rd and 24th, either of these days, the Department of State released an official announcement which mentioned that H1B or H2B visa is covered, but did not specify whether an H1B1 is included. So again, it stated H1B, H2B. And then on June 25th, there's another communication from the US Embassy in Singapore, from their service desk, stated the same announcement as the Department of State's official announcement immediately above. but again did not specify if the H1B1 is included. So you have the US Embassy in Singapore awaiting implementing guidance, and then shortly thereafter, or around the same time, the Department of State released an official announcement. As you know, the Department of State oversees all the embassies that mentioned H1B, H2B, did not specify if H1B1 is included. And then in the meantime, actually for me, as a member of the American Immigration Lawyers Association, I had submitted the question about H1B1 to our government liaison, but again, as of today, we are still waiting clarification. So what the government liaisons usually do is they summarize the questions that we have, and they try to get some sort of response from the government officials, especially the ones from the Department of State. So here's where we are, and I think the long story short is, we don't know. Unfortunately, it's still a question mark. Fingers crossed. Okay, next. So, so here is the legal position, I think. Legally speaking, so if you have if you are seeking an H1B1 Singapore visa, regardless of the above uncertainty, of the interpretation whether the H1B1 is included in that phrase H1B or H2B, you should not be affected if you were inside the US on June 24th, and or you already have a valid unexpired H1B1 visa embossed inside your passport, and or, as you know, if you are seeking an H1B1 visa to perform work essential to the food supply chain, and or you are seeking an H1B1 visa to perform work in which your entry will be in the national interest. But practically speaking, the US Embassy in Singapore is probably still seeking specific guidance. So it's unclear, practically speaking, how they'll deal with it. Next, as you know, routine visa services are suspended. So all categories of visas currently cannot be issued anyway for the time being. And the final point I want to make is there's no guarantee that the US consular officers will correctly apply the legal perspective. Because in practice, we do not know, and I suspect as of now, they do not know how to apply it. Again, the proclamation is lacking in precision. It appears to be lacking in precision and clarity. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of unfortunate. Mm-hmm. Yeah. However, there is one small little glimmer of hope, is that there is a lot of talk about anticipated lawsuits to try to stop the proclamation. Mm-hmm. So here's a link to just a recent report on the day of the proclamation itself. So mm-hmm. So there will be anticipated federal lawsuits. I mean, of course, whether they'll be successful remain to be seen. Mm-hmm. So that's also an area of uncertainty as well. So yeah, I'm sorry, I wish I have something clearer, but really as of this time, I believe, I think everyone is still kind of awaiting like clarifications. And I know that H1B1 Singapore is something that is very, very relevant to Singaporeans. So hopefully some clarifications will come out soon. So fingers crossed on that.
Got it. Hey, thank you. This is so useful. I know we have a few questions that have come through, Junwen, in the chat window. Some of them include the fact that of what if they are actually looking at renewing or changing their status now, so they haven't filed the application, but they need to soon. What happens?
Yeah, you'll be okay, because most likely you all have been here before and on June 24th anyway. You are not seeking a visa from the Department of State, from the embassies. And USCIS is, when you do something here with USCIS, is not affected by the presidential proclamation.
I see.
Yeah. So if someone is thinking, okay, I have currently I am here in the US on an L1 visa classification, L1 status. I'm still here, but it's going to expire in August. Then if you're seeking to extend that L1 status with USCIS, you are not impacted by the presidential proclamation, so that you can continue staying here. The goal is to extend your legal status here in the US, so you don't have to leave the US and not be able to apply for a new L1 visa to enter the US, provided your previous L1 visa has already expired.
Got it. That's good to know. Thank you. Any other closing thoughts, Junwen, before we sign off from your section? I think this was super informative for us, just to understand the different steps. And we also understand that we all are still waiting to confirm the H1B1 situation. And this seems to be rather fluid. Have you made some applications so far for H1B1 and heard anything back at this point, or are we waiting to hear back?
So currently, for Singaporeans who are seeking H1B1 visas, or any visas for that matter, at the US Embassy in Singapore, they would unfortunately get a notification making them postpone, effectively postponing their interviews. But there is no kind of like indication as to when they'll stop making Singaporeans postpone their interviews. So at this time, Singaporeans, especially those who are now in Singapore, are waiting for their visa appointments, H1B1 Singapore, or even any other visas. They're having a tough time because of the uncertainty. On the other hand, here in the US, Singaporeans, whether maybe through their company lawyers, because they are working here, they would probably be looking at applying for an extension here through USCIS. So I've seen that. So those are not affected. Okay, so here's just a quick background. For presidential proclamations, President Trump can only use certain authorities granted to him by the Immigration and Nationality Act to suspend entry from overseas. But he doesn't have, normally the Immigration and Nationality Act does not give the president power to quickly make changes for people who are already here in the US. So that's why you see that a lot of the impact is with people trying to get visas to enter the US.
Got it. That's very helpful. Thank you. So once again, many thanks for participating in our Singapore Connect forum. I've included your contact information in the chat window so that folks can reach out to you via LinkedIn for specific questions as well. And I see a few more questions that are very specific as well come up there. Some confirmation on some things you've mentioned already. I don't know if you want to just kind of take a look at this, but
okay, actually, before you leave me, one thing I mentioned to the organizers beforehand is another disclaimer, which is I think today probably I will only be able to, through the presentation, maybe deal with 65% of all the questions. So I should have probably put this at the beginning, simply because of time concerns, and also because everybody's individual situation and background is different. And so basically
absolutely.
So so probably for the remaining 35%, I apologize, because it's just simply not possible to deal with every single specific situation.
Well, in any case, we appreciate the broad strokes and introduction, because I think when the proclamation came out, there's been a lot of confusion about it. And so even just understanding how you guys are thinking about it, right? Even in the professional community, professional legal community, helps us understand, what's happening in a way. So thank you. And it's great that a member of our Singaporean community can help us here. So Junwen, thank you again. Junwen is based in LA, but he's definitely, you can reach out to him via LinkedIn if if you have any questions. And I know he's helping a few of our friends here in the SF Bay area as well with some of the inquiries. So thanks again, Junwen.
Sure.
And David, in the light of the Michael's update in terms of the economic opportunities in Asia, I think, Singapore Global Network can also help some Singaporeans going back there with a nice landing zone with resources. Yes? Would you like to share?
Hello, Jasmine.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. So just want to share with everyone that on the SGN front, we have been engaging with a lot of Singaporeans here in the US. And similar to what Junman also mentioned earlier, I think everyone's situation is very unique. So on our end, as part of the Singapore Global Network, which is part of the Singapore government, we are here for you, especially during this period of time where you might encounter a lot of challenges, whether it's in terms of your personal or whether it's in terms of your working life. So feel free to reach out to me. I think you realize that for the Zoom registration for this week, we actually explicitly mentioned whether you would like to sign up for the Singapore Global Network. So for those of you who have acknowledged and that you are okay to sign up with SGN, I'll send an email after this as well to introduce myself, share a little bit more about what SGN can offer for you guys. And I really encourage all of you to reach out to me whether it's with regard to personal reasons or with regard to opportunities back home in Singapore. More than happy to see how I can connect you with the right people. I mean, ultimately, that's the whole essence of being part of a network. So so I'll send an email out to everyone. And as mentioned before for previous forums, I think many of times you have heard already, this session could not be possible without the hard work of SingaporeConnect. So Maxine, Jasmine, the MFA folks over here as well, Michael for giving his time, early on a Monday morning to talk to you guys, and of course Junwen, who has been so fantastic for us. So all these people are part of the community, and really, I think there's one thing that shines through, which is the community spirit. So for those of you out there who feel that you want to help out, especially for this forum, you have ideas, you want to share, or you just want to volunteer, more than happy to talk to you as well. So when I send out an email, just feel free to engage me. Yeah.
That's fabulous indeed. Yeah, I think we have each other to thank for this. This has indeed really been a community, these past months, ever since we started on March 15th. David, thank you as well for being a lot of the catalyst behind this, behind the scenes and in front, with all the work you're doing in WhatsApp groups, Slack and everything, just to get the news flowing among all of us, right? So thank you to Singapore Global Network and David, particularly for the hard work and for bringing us all together. That's just awesome. So everyone, this has been, I think, another super informative session. I've learned a lot about not just the voting process, but also the visa situation. And of course, what's going on with the VCs with respect to their take on the economy and the opportunities out there. So, I really appreciate everyone joining us this evening as well. I think we will be having our next session in about 2 weeks' time. Many of you have proposed different topics. We certainly are looking forward to, some of you stepping up if you'd like to contribute as well and to be a speaker in our next forum for some of the topics we have coming up too. I think that would be just before, I think as we go through this, it would be very close to the election period too, so there might be even more questions there. But look out for our next session, which is going to be in 2 weeks. As we wrap up, just a quick round, Daryl, any final notes before we sign off from the MFA side?
Hi, Jasmine. Just repeat my earlier point. Do kind of like tune in because nomination day is on the 30th of June, and we'll be reaching out to all registered overseas voters very shortly after. Thanks.
Thank you. That's great advice. Thank you. Perfect. Appreciate all your hard work there. This has been quite a year. Not only do we have COVID, we also have elections at the same time. You guys have certainly been keeping super busy. So thank you for this. And I think as a community, we've been trying to be as, understanding as well. But so thanks for your responses. Junwen, any parting words from your end?
No, but thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you for coming and joining us. We find ourselves hopefully not more in this situation. In fact, we had one question from the audience, about whether there might be further proclamations coming down the pipe. And this is Trump, right? How would any?
Yeah, it's definitely something. It's a valid concern because even this proclamation that we just talked about tonight talks about the possibility of modifying it when necessary.
Got it.
So this would be revisited.
Okay.
So
Got it. Interesting times indeed. Thank you, Junwen, and thank you for hopping on so quickly in response to the community. In fact, I must say there's a background story to this. When this came out, we all knew we were going to get Junwen, and Junwen was like, well, I have to do some research on this. This is all happening real time. In the meantime, we had Zhi Cong, from the Berkeley crew, was like, let me put together some questions already for Junwen. And then before we knew it, we had over 20 questions from some of you guys out there in the community. So this has truly been a lot of communication and excitement over this topic. So thanks for taking care of us, Junwen.
sure.
Mark, parting words from SingaporeConnect.
We in SingaporeConnect are amazed by how strong the participation in these forums are. We really look forward to meeting many of you in person when we can next have a physical event. These events are put together with the hard work of many people, and we thank them. I'd like to add, let's recall the forum started to try help those in our community in need. Please reach out to us if you know of such people. We are stronger when united together.
I think, from SingaporeConnect's perspective, we're all, really grateful for all of you being with us through this journey since March 15th. This has indeed been a super interesting period for all of us, unprecedented times, but also as a community, we've really come together as a team. I think the people attending these calls, are not just Bay Area folks. And I was saying, lots of people from all over the Bay, as well as around the country. We're even noticing folks from the East Coast, dialing in super late. We're going to try to reduce the length of these sessions so that we have fewer topics. But today we just, these topics just really needed to be covered because there was so much anxiety in the community. So once again, many thanks to all the speakers and to all of you for joining. It's going to keep our fingers crossed, for the visas and for the news related to what we need to do for voting. Meantime, everybody stay healthy, and we'll talk to you guys soon in 2 weeks. Bye for now. Thank you again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.